In this lecture, we're going to be looking at NSTimers. And basically what NSTimers are is a kind of loop system that performs or triggers a void statement over and over again on a certain amount of time. Let's say you set it for 1 second. So every second that goes by, it will loop and trigger this void statement, and whatever's in this void statement will be triggered to perform over and over again until we say otherwise. And this can be created to do many things. As you'll see when we create more and more applications further on the course, we use NSTimers quite a bit. Now, how we're going to be exampling NSTimers in this lecture is by creating like a counter. We're going to be able to press a button and it's going to start counting upwards in a label, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and basically until we say stop. So we're going to give you an example of how NSTimers work. So what we're going to do is drag in a button and a label. Now our button is going to be what we use to trigger the NSTimer to start. So, and then I place a label underneath, and the label will display the NSTimer's results from within it. So if I just name this button, or rename it, start. I'll drag this down a little bit so you can see. And then what we're going to do before we jump into creating actions and outlets, we're going to jump into our viewcontroller.h. We can bring it up with the assistant editor. So make sure we selected on it. And before we add in our actions and outlets, we're going to create a parentheses or curly brackets and enter just after our UI view controller. And we're going to add in our two variables of an NSTimer and an int. Now the reason we add them in these brackets here is because it's inside, and we're not adding the where we're placing the actions or adding an app property of an outlet, as we're creating the variables from within the brackets. So we do NSTimer space, making sure we got it right there, NSTimer space asterisk, and I simply call it timer. That's easy enough there. And we create an int, and we do the int the same, so we create an int, and this will be our count int. So the NSTimer what will be triggering and repeating itself over and over again, and the int or the count int that we've called it what will be displayed in our label. So every time we go 1 second, our int will count up to 1, 2, 3, and will display the result of our int within our label, so we can give our users some visual confirmation. Okay, so then we're going to create an outlet for our label, which I simply call label. And then we create the action for our button, which I simply name it start count. There we go, nice and easy, making sure that's on action and connect that up. Okay, so we close our assistant editor down and we're going to jump straight into our viewcontroller.m. And you can see here we got our button. We're just going to space it out. There we go, so we can see what we're typing. And we're going to start by, as soon as we trigger our button, it's going to set our int to 0. So by setting our int at 0, we can then start counting up from it. So our count int is then going to equal just 0. Nice and easy there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get all the results or the result from the int and display that into our label. So as soon as we press equal our int to 0, then we're going to display that in the label. So we do self.label.text, there we go, space equals space, and we can't just simply do like we've done before, like countInt.text just to equal that. We can't do that because we have to create an NS string to place the int within it. So we do bracket NS string space string with format, and we do the @ symbol and 2 quotation marks, and after that we're going to do a comma space count int and that of a bracket and a semicolon. Now because we placed a comma and a count int after our string, we can then link up or create the shortcode to equal that string or the count int within the string. So we do the %sign and the letter I, which is kind of like a shortcode to place ints within our string. So when we display the text, it's not going to display %sign and the letter I, it's actually going to display the int here. Now if we did a comma and added a second one in, well then how we add another one in, we do space %sign I, and it will display the second one within our string. So that's how we would add 2 in. We're only working with 1, so that's all we need to do there. And then what we're going to do is simply trigger our timer. So we do timer is what we called our NSTimer equals a bracket NSTimer. So schedule time with interval. We need the one with the target, select that and user info. There we go. And in the schedule timer interval highlighted section here, we want it to repeat every 1 second as we create an accounting timer. So we do 1.0, which equals to 1 second. If you want half a second, you'll do 0.5. In the target, we're going to simply have self. In the selector, we're going to do @selector. And then we can come back to that section in just a moment. User info, we're going to have nil. And repeats, we're going to have yes, as we want it to repeat over and over again. So we come back to that in just a second, that highlighted section. We need to create a void statement. So we do dash bracket void, bracket there, and I simply name this count timer, and create our parentheses there. And what's going to happen is within our selector here, if we name it our count timer, every second it's going to trigger this void statement. So that's what's basically going to happen. And in this void statement, this is where we're going to get our int to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, which will create that counting timer. So we do count space, and it's going to plus equals 1. So every time this NSTimer repeats itself, it's going to trigger our void statement, then get our count int to plus equals 1. So let's say it starts at 0, like it's going to. We're going to trigger it. It's going to keep repeating itself, and every time it gets that void statement, it's going to plus, then equals 1. So as it starts at 0, plus equals 1 will be 1. Now our count int is at the number 1. And then when it repeats itself again, it's going to go plus equals 1 again. Now, as it was already at 1, it's going to add 1 to it, so it will go 2, 3, 4, all the way up every second. And then we want to make sure that it's displaying this in our label. So we're going to repeat what we did before, self.label.text, space equals space bracket NSString, space string with format, @ 2 quotation marks, comma, our count int at the end, and that we're bracketing it semicolon, and making sure we got the short code for our %sign and the letter I. So if we go to build and run and quickly test this out. Now as it's loaded up, we got our button here and our label. As soon as we press start, it's going to set our int to 0 and display that within our label, and then it's going to trigger our NSTimer. And the NSTimer is going to repeat every second, and it will start counting up 1 within our label. So we do it, equals 0. Now every second is going to keep climbing as we set it to add 1 every second, and that repeats itself over and over again until we say so. Now at the moment we can't tell it to stop. We can't cancel the timer from repeating. So what we need to do is then add in a second button. So I'm going to simply find our button now, and this button will be simply our stop button. So if I drag it over and I'll rename this stop, bring up our assistant editor, and I'm going to drag and drop this in as a new button and call this our stop button, or stop count. That'll be easy enough. Stop count, change that to an action, connect it up, close our assistant editor, jump back into our view controller.m, and then within our stop count here, which is just placed it above our void statement, what we need to do is bracket, get our timer, which is our NSTimer that's repeating itself, and then we need to stop it. So we need to invalidate it. By doing that, it then just completely cancels out its repeating motion that it's doing. So if we go to build and run and test this out once more. So we press our start, it starts counting up, and whenever we want, we can press our stop button, and it stops validating our NSTimer to repeat itself, and it's finishing on its last count. And then we can restart it by pressing start, which puts it back to 0, and it starts counting up again, 2, 3, 4, 5, and any time we can stop it, and it stops on the number it last counted to. So this is a great example of how we can use NSTimers within our applications to perform actions. We can get stuff to repeat over and over again, or we can just get actions that simply trigger at a later date. It's a great way, and it's a great basis for many applications, which you're going to see as we create further on in the course, where we use NSTimers more in depth to control such things as simple and basic games. In the next lecture, we're going to be using NSTimers in a different way. We're going to be using them to display time and date within our application.